Okay, so we are going to start the second part of the session. We will have two presentations of topics that we think that are really of interest for any region in the world, cross-disciplinary. And the first one is going to be Frederik, and it's going to be in the area of data sharing. So please, Frederik, you have the floor.
Thank you, José María, and thank you for the opportunity to present what we're doing within ELIXIR on data management. So I think it's clear for everybody that funders across the globe are now mandating researchers to share and enable others to reuse their data. And we need to find answers to actually make this happen, because usually you just get, well, your data needs to be fair and open. But how do you start doing that? Where to start writing, executing this data management plan? Because on the one hand, the support that's out there is overwhelming. There's so many initiatives, so much information out there. But on the other hand, it's often underwhelming because it's very high-level information. If they tell you you need to put your data in a repository, you still don't know what you need to do. So what we're trying to do within ELIXIR is give some clarity here. And we already have a lot of resources. If you look at the FAIR services around standards or the trusted repositories, all the trainings that we do, there's a lot of information out there within ELIXIR, but it's a very complicated landscape. If you need to do this end-to-end, from generating your data to reusing it, then you need to use a lot of different resources. And it also depends on your context. So we have, at the European and global level, these trusted repositories, but then there's specialized ones, national ones that you, some guys need to use, for example, for sensitive data. Your institute probably has something to say about that, where you need to put your data. So researchers, data stewards need to navigate this whole landscape, and frankly, it's not trivial. So with the ELIXIR Converge project, we started setting out how can we help researchers, data stewards, project managers to actually do this and navigate this complex landscape and contribute to it. And what we came up with is RDM Kit, which provides guidance on the research data management support landscape. And you can find it on the website on the screen. And what we've done here is we provide support for all of the phases across the life cycle of projects. So from planning and collecting your data to processing and analyzing to long-term preservation, sharing, and ultimately reuse. And we've built an online focal point that provides guidance, information, best practices on how to do in practice data management. And the way we've done this is to provide a lot of context and signposts to other resources that can help you go into much more detail of what you need. And so we've built a hub of knowledge commons. We've launched this in the middle of the pandemic. We've done everything online, or at least the startup. And we got a lot of traction. And it resonated with people, so that was a very nice collaboration that we had. And I'm just going to go through some of the entry points, some of the ways you can get information off RDM Kit, and they're grouped in 6 levels or entry points that you can see here. On the one hand, we have the data lifecycle, so the different phases that have certain characteristics that are very common for data management in life sciences. What does it mean to share data? How can you reuse data? What do you need for planning? Of course, if you have different roles, we need to take that into account. If you're a first-year PhD student or a data steward with 10 years experience, then you need different information. You're looking for different information. We need to phrase it in a different way, and we need to take that into account through our different roles. We're adding now also a project manager role in this. Of course, also the domain you work in is specific. I'm coming from a plant institute. Our researchers aren't interested where they need to put human data, but for others, that's the only thing they care about. So we really try to focus this on different areas, and this is one area where we can expand because we've covered the areas that within our project and within ELIXIR are kind of the high priority ones, but I'm sure that, for example, in Latin America, there's areas that can be added here for those specific communities. Of course, there's also common things that are kind of transversal through all of the data management. You need to write a data management plan. If you need to handle sensitive data, it doesn't really matter what kind this is. There's common characteristics, and we try to outline this in the common task that we defined. While there are common things, there's also specifics for your country. I'm coming from Belgium. We have funders that have specific requirements, and if you're looking in the different countries in Europe, all of these funders have slightly different things, so you need to be aware of that. Here we just point to this information, and we try to collect this so people can easily know what they need to do. And of course, for other countries, and it's in Europe, it's already complicated, so I'm sure that in Latin America it's going to be different, and we need to, or that's an area where we can add information specifically for those communities. As I said, it's a complicated landscape that you need to navigate. It's also not just one tool that you're going to use. You're going to use a collection of tools that need to work together to be able to cover all of the aspects. And that's what we try to do in these tool assemblies, and that's maybe the kind of most important part of the kit that we've made. I'll just give one example of the node in Luxembourg that made TransMed, which is for translational biomedical research, and they have a whole ecosystem. I'm aware you can't read it in detail, but there's a whole ecosystem of tools that work together, and we know they can work together because this is what they are in fact using in Luxembourg. So you can take inspiration of that, or you can take it over, and there's actually also contact information on who has set this up, and that you can kind of approach to get more details. And this allows us to get this list of these are the tools that they've been using. And these lists can be very useful, but we really want to make sure that within an RDM kit, we don't just provide very long lists of look at these things. We want to provide them in the narrative context. How can you use it? In what circumstances is it useful? And in what maybe not? And if you want more details, then we branch out to the registries that we have, bio.tools, fair sharing, ELIXIR TAS, which will be later on presented, to give you all the nitty-gritty details that you need to know. We're also not alone in this landscape. Within ELIXIR, other things are happening. We have the FAIR Cookbook that provides detailed recipes with even code examples in there. There's the Data Stewardship Wizard, which is a hierarchical questionnaire that goes really deep into what do you really need in your circumstance. And as said, with RDM Kit, we provide the context and we try to link all of these things, which allows us to use it as a showcase for all of the ELIXIR FAIR services and bring them into context and easily reachable and understandable. So wrapping up, this is not something that kind of ELIXIR is building and then putting out there. We're doing this with the community, for the community. So this has been built with all of the nodes. We're talking to people in the US, we've been talking to people in India recently. So we're open to contributions from everywhere, also from Latin America, very welcome. And we've tried to make our editorial processes as open as possible. They're all described on the website. Our main way is GitHub, but we also use Google Docs to make it really accessible for everybody, regardless of your technical skills. And we take very great care of contributors at credits, because that's extremely important that we recognize who has been contributing to this resource, and we try to make a safe environment through, for example, our code of conduct. As a side note, we've developed this kind of approach to collect information. We're now also seeing that other projects are adopting this same approach, and they're using the backbone, so the templates that we've built in GitHub, to set up similar resources that go beyond the scope of RDM Kit. With RDM Kit, we really want to focus on data management. An example here of the BiCOVID project on infectious diseases that encompasses everything, visualization tools, websites, etc. So we made this separate, or we're in the process of making a separate toolkit based on the same technologies that we've been using. So where do we go in the future? We want to add more domains, and we're very welcome for adding Latin American specific domains or high priority domains. We're looking at collaborations with communities. Biodiversity is one example there. We want to collect much more tool assemblies. These are really powerful ways of showing how we can do data management. We want to expand the number of roles and, of course, also the national pages. So I think there's a couple of opportunities here to collaborate. You have access to this resource. You're very welcome to use it as is. We're also very welcoming to contributions to national pages, domain pages, task pages, and these tool assemblies. So thank you for your attention, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them now or later on. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Frederik. The questions will be at the end. And now we have the last presentation by Katharina Heil. She is the head of the training committee of ELIXIR, beside ELIXIR Communities Coordinator. And training is one of these cross activities that could be interesting for any region. Please, Katharina.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at the slides. Great, thank you. And thanks for coming as well. Yes, I will be covering some of the training activity aspects, but also opportunities for engagement that we can present from the ELIXIR side. You see Fotis who's sitting there. I think he's wearing a different hat later on in the discussion, but he's one of the training excos at ELIXIR together with Jessica as well, and they both kindly helped me to put those slides together. So let's start and have a look at what training in bioinformatics and biological data management in ELIXIR and beyond looks like. So it's really about establishing a sustainable training infrastructure supported and adopted by all ELIXIR nodes, so across Europe. You've seen the nodes in Andy's presentation at the beginning, but also to deliver a coherent, high quality and impactful ELIXIR training program, which then builds on and is completed and complements the training programs in the existing nodes with all the activities that they are carrying out on their national levels. We've got our website down here. Feel free to have a look at it. But much of the information that is there will be on the next slides, and they will be shared with you as well. So training is learning from and sharing with others. So it's really about the community and the people that come together. The knowledge is often with some people. The training needs to be carried out by potentially others, and it somehow needs to reach the users. You can see that research infrastructures play a role in all this as well, specifically when it comes to training in domains that ELIXIR cares very much about, and the trainers are at the core. And the trainers, I think the profile of those has probably also shifted over the years. It's ideally the experts in the field, but they will also need to know how to actually train properly, how to bring across that knowledge that will then be needed by users to use and leverage the tools and the possibilities that they want to be accessing to analyze and to do their bioinformatics research and analysis. So I'm going to quickly talk you through the key infrastructure elements which ELIXIR develops in the remit of training. So we have the ELIXIR training portal test that has been mentioned a couple of times already. There's ELIXIR batched training events, and that's really for researchers, developers, infrastructure operators, and trainers. So you see that we're spanning a wide range of different target audiences. The Train the Trainer program consolidates, has been consolidated and is available for use, and it's also steadily growing the number of trainers, but also the Train the Trainer pool, which are people that will be able to support and to give trainings on how to then train in the area of bioinformatics. The ELIXIR Training Toolkit is a resource with training best practices, guidelines for trainers, and standardized metrics for quality and impact assessment, which will be made available and accessible for you as well. I will touch on the training metrics database as well, which is a standardized metric for quality and impact assessment. I think we all agree that it's very important to also be able to showcase the impact that our trainings are having, as to be able to keep supporting them and showcase to others why it is so successful to think about training as a component of the research framework itself. I will quickly cover fair training activities that are happening in the ELIXIR training community as well, and e-learning solutions. Let's have a quick look at the ELIXIR training portal test. The link is at the top, and as Andy said, this is an open resource for you to use, but also to be contributing to. So this is recognized inside and outside ELIXIR as a solid approach to catalog and share training events and materials. And really, it's a source for you to have a look at what courses are available, what materials are available. It's an integral part of the knowledge ecosystem for capacity building. And as you can see, is that since June 2022, we had about 1,400 training materials uploaded on the platform with up to almost 70 upcoming events, and more than 12,000 past events were also linked to, amongst others, the RDM kit, which Frederik just presented. You can have a look at some of the other activities. The platform itself has also been adopted by the Australian Research Data Commons, who are a strategic partner of ELIXIR, and maybe this is something to also think about in the context of collaborations with the Latin American continent. I had touched on training impact today, and in the future, we do consider all these aspects very closely when we think about the activities that the platform and the infrastructure carries out. What you see on this slide is ELIXIR's impact areas, the way they are defined for the overall research infrastructure, and we've mapped some of the training activities to those. So what you can see, we're very much interested in the human capital, but also relationship capital, which really goes back to the people that are, for example, involved in activities such as the RDM kit and others. And what I would like to look at, and we'll be picking up later on as well, are the bioinformatics education summits and connecting globally, which is, I think, also what we're representing here at the moment. A concrete example of how ELIXIR also assesses its impact is the training metrics database. It's a standardized metrics for quality impact assessment, and it really aims to describe the audience demographic being reached by ELIXIR batched training events. It assesses the quality of ELIXIR batched training events directly after they have taken place. And it also aims towards long-term impact evaluation to really see what's the impact of the trainings 6 months after the attendees have benefited from the training events themselves. Looking at the numbers, between 2015 and July 2022, there were about 1,500 events that had been added to the TMD itself, which means that's equivalent to about 5,000 days of training, and we have been able to reach about 38,000 participants. It's a public resource, so you can have a look at the website. You can also see that there are already trainings registered in the database that have been happening in South America, and we hope that there will be more to come in the future. I wanted to spend this one slide on the Train the Trainer program, which aims to increase bioinformatics capacity and competency in Europe. It says Europe here because that's our current main audience, but I can also say that this has been already trialed in an approach with the Australian colleagues that we're having and that are involved in this effort as well. So it really is a program that fosters a network of trainers, which we refer to as the ELIXIR Train the Trainer instructors community. And we allow them to benefit from reciprocal support and exchange of experience. The Train the Trainer courses give new instructors tools and tips for providing and enriching learning experiences to trainers, irrespective of the topic, and to include best practice guidance on course and training material development. So what you can see are a couple of the topics that we covered during those courses, which are the principles of learning and how they apply to training, a number of training techniques for enhancing learner engagement and participation, also designing of engaging sessions, materials, and courses, and we also include some aspects on assessment and feedback in training. What we have achieved so far is to train almost 400 people since ELIXIR started in about 32 Train the Trainer courses, and most of this is also covered in the professional guides that have been published together with the ELIXIR Goblet initiative. Goblet was also on one of the slides that were presented earlier today. It's a global organization for bioinformatics learning, education, and training, and is active in the bioinformatics training community. What is next for ELIXIR more concretely when it comes to the training itself? So the ELIXIR training infrastructure will be hopefully a recognized and trusted life science training foundation across Europe, offering essential training resources to empower researchers to find, share, and receive training on life sciences, and thus growing bioinformatics capacity and competence in Europe. So how would we like to achieve this? It always will be a community effort. You see on the slide that the training toolkit is mentioned here again. We do very much look into identifying and understanding what is available in the market in the different countries, and where is a need to develop more and to add training delivery in certain areas. So that will then hopefully help us to consolidate quality and impact of the training of our tests as well, and really grow and increase training capacity building. Looking a little bit further, we would really also like to look more into being the life science research infrastructure representative on an international level. So very happy to be here and talk to you in one of the other continents on the globe, and to look into training capacity and skill building across different nodes and countries. What you can see at the far right is also related to aspects of open science and open education, seamlessly integrating ELIXIR technical infrastructures and resources to other European and international education efforts. So what are the opportunities for engagement? I think our message would really be to join efforts. And where it starts for us is to identify the strengths, the experiences, and the challenges that are identified in different regions, in different countries, given different contexts, or given also different scientific disciplines. And then we would really like to aim towards exchanging training materials, but also experiences. It's been mentioned before, there will always be differences in what regions are focusing on, so we are convinced that there's something to learn for everybody in those interactions. So interactions between respective communities would also really refer to having people that are interested in working in similar scientific areas, to allow them to come together, to exchange what is available, to identify what could be added so that the community can grow and strive. Connecting to and using tests is a low-hanging fruit, which could really be done from tomorrow on basically already. And on a side note, I think there's also a lot of openness towards helping and supporting each other and understanding how to best use those tools and interact with them. Assessing training impact is something we would be very happy to support as well, but also to learn. It's an ongoing effort that we're trying to improve on an ongoing basis as well. The train-the-trainer courses, as I have said before, I think that is really something which would be great to look at together as well. And when it comes to the more topic-oriented areas, it is easy for everybody to join ELIXIR focus groups and also some of our ELIXIR scientific communities. You can see the individual topics that they're focusing on in the outer circle on the slide. And those are just some of the ideas that we have brought together for now. The FAIR Training Focus Group is one of those concrete examples. So it is ELIXIR and international training communities that are looking at how to make training fair, and just a concrete example on how you could get engaged with us. We come together on a monthly basis, and one of the outcomes that has been made available are 10 simple rules for making training materials fair, so a topic very much at the heart of training as well. And this is just one way how very proactively different people from different regions come together and can work on one topic. So last but not least, training is all about caring, sharing, scaling, embedding, and making things sustainable. And people are our most valuable element in that whole journey. So I think a joint vision, a collaborative mindset, passion and commitment, and perseverance, determination, and hard work have already made a lot of things possible, and we're convinced that more of this will even take it further and enable more people to be able to have access to knowledge which they can then again disseminate in their own individual areas. And with this, I'd like to acknowledge the people that are actually doing most of the work, which are our training coordinators. This was at a meeting that we were happy to have in a hybrid mode earlier in the year, and all the others that are involved in the efforts, the training platform members and the training focus group members, as well as our ELIXIR training excos and the ELIXIR hub itself. Thank you very much.
you, Katharina. And now it comes a difficult part. It says open discussion, and we have half an hour. And I tell you that I would like to get something concrete. We are in Spain having the ECCB. It is quite, I believe, normal that we try to make something concrete on the strategy with Latin America. And to start perhaps a discussion which is going to be difficult because people are in remote, I would like to ask to the Latin American people, to the people that are from the societies that have already presented what they are doing. They have heard what we have presented of ELIXIR. I'm pretty sure they already knew the EBI and ELIXIR. Is there anything you would dream that you would like to do together? Question number one. Question number two for ELIXIR. I mean, really, there is the need to make strategies, and internationalization is an absolute part of a research infrastructure. So after perhaps listening what our colleagues in Latin America says, what could be the next steps for a strategy towards Latin America of ELIXIR? I would be very happy if we are able to get something concrete along those lines. So I don't know how these Zoom things work, but if you guys from, I see Matthew at the bottom, so the second question is for you, but the first question is really, what would you like, Latin America? What have you heard that you like? What have you seen that you like? What would you say, what would you tell us that now could be strategized by our head of external relationships? You have the floor. Some people.
Yeah, great question.
And now an answer.
Well, here, this is not only for the society, but also for my line of research. I really would like to see more connections among all the institutions. Reusing data is something that it's really, really important nowadays. And here in Latin America, especially on biodiversity, it's we have a really big amount of data. And if you step up on this data and scavenge deeply what is in there, you're going to see a lot of duplication of data. So this is one thing I really would like to see happening on the Latin America, this collaboration on sharing data. And the FAIR initiative is one thing that we must do not on 2-3 years, but we have to do it now. We have to put this on work right now. I think this ELIXIR, the expertise that ELIXIR have, it's going to be great for us to make a Latin American node. First, it's starting low, trying to connect few key universities and research institutes on this initiative, and then trying to bring people here to make this big. It's a simple question with a huge, complex answer, but I think this is where I'm trying to work here at AB3C and at my lab to make this integration of data happen. And it's not easy. I think the guy Andrew can talk a little bit more on how to bring different data, different wantings for one data set, even it's federated. I don't think I answered much, but this is what we are struggling now.
Yeah, and I think that biodiversity is a fantastic word, a fantastic concept for this meeting that is planetary health, and for for the moment we are living. Please, Argentina.
Yes, thank you. So I agree with everything that Marcelo told us. I think the underlying message here is that there's data and there are needs in Latin America that come from here that can't be found nowhere else, but which could benefit people from all parts of the world, right? And I think the same applies to training. So what Marcelo told us is very important, and I think it requires a certain level of organization between the different partners in Latin America, Europe, and other parts of the world. But I think what we already have at hand is the opportunity to deliver our training materials, which were made by people that perhaps speak Spanish, that are underrepresented in all these portals that we have for training, that we feed from, that we take resources to teach and maybe translate and adequate to our environments, but there are also the opportunity to transfer the knowledge that we have into these platforms, and that's already at hand. We already have the training materials made for our courses, we have the expertise, and it could be good to have a place where we can put all these training materials for the whole world to take, and perhaps with a certain delocalized view. You know, perhaps the data sets we use for this training and data sets that are more related to people within our communities, perhaps with, I don't know, certain types of diseases that are not well taken care of in other latitudes, or perhaps with certain problems in the economy or the social composition of our communities that are different from the rest of the world and are still a bit underrepresented. So I think that's increasing the opportunities to put this knowledge for the wider benefit of people outside Latin America using the infrastructure that is already there. That could be a very easy an easy pathway forward for a fruitful collaboration between these two worlds that are, of course, related, but sometimes appear very, very far from each other.
Thank you. Now perhaps to Andrew, with everything, which could be the first steps towards a strategy towards Latin America?
Yeah, so I'd actually like to start by thanking Marcelo and Nicolas, and also Shirley, who had to leave, because I think I'm sure my colleagues in Europe would agree that we have a much better understanding of all of the activities that are taking place in Brazil and Argentina and Mexico and other Latin American countries now, and the work that's being done there to try and coordinate and connect people, bioinformaticians, train them, help with capacity building is really impressive. So I think it's really been fantastic. In terms of things that we can do in future, how we can collaborate, how we can take forward the next steps, I think what I would like to do is just reflect on some of the differences also between the situation in Latin America and in Europe, because the presentations we've heard have really been about bringing together individuals through societies, and that's incredibly important. But in ELIXIR, in Europe, what we've been trying to do is legally connect these institutions and organizations together, and then have a framework where we can provide funding to those partners to work together. Now, any country in the world can become a member of ELIXIR, but it requires the Ministry of Science in that country to really want to join another intergovernmental organization outside that continent. So the easiest way of embedding collaborations in the long term would obviously be for a country to become a member of ELIXIR, but realistically, that's probably unlikely because most governments aren't keen at the moment to join intergovernmental organizations coordinated from other continents. And that's simply the reality. So I think what we need to do is look at other options, other mechanisms to try and embed collaboration. Now, it's clear scientifically there's lots of areas where this would make sense. We've already heard biodiversity in areas where Latin America has lots of knowledge and data sets that are actually important for the rest of the world. There's also themes like COVID and infectious disease, where clearly we need to be able to share data globally as well. So I would say scientifically, there's lots of areas where it would make sense. And I think the theme of training, if we set aside which scientific disciplines, the theme of training and data management are clearly areas where there could be collaborations as well. But I think if we look at the best ways of doing this, some of it could happen on EU-funded projects. That's a possibility. So the European Union does have EU funding schemes that allows partners in Europe to work together with partners in Latin America and other countries. Getting that funding can be challenging, but it's possible, and there are schemes there to internationalize research infrastructures or to allow for training across institutes from Latin America to Europe as well. So we could follow on with a conversation about appropriate EU funding that would allow experts in ELIXIR nodes to collaborate with and build long-term contacts with their partners in Latin America as well. So that's another way of doing it. But we can also look at some of these informal routes as well. So Frederik mentioned that the RDM kit, the way it's built, allows for individuals in other countries to be able to contribute to it. And I hope that following this presentation, our partners in Latin America will think about how they might want to connect to and contribute to the RDM kit. And also on the same in training as well, where it's clear there's a lot of interest. Perhaps we need to have a training focused discussion with colleagues afterwards about understanding needs, maybe mapping, looking to see if there could be more training done as well. So in my mind, it's clear that there's lots of areas in which we can collaborate, but probably what we need to do is just look at the mechanisms that can make that happen, because it's probably best to start in an ad hoc way by looking at the bits of ELIXIR that are open to collaborations. So Katharina mentioned the fair training focus group, where you could have experts from outside Europe taking part in that. So I think probably starting in a more informal ad hoc way is a better route, and then building up to see if there could be some EU funding applications submitted. That's some immediate reflections from me about how these collaborations could be taken forward in future.
Yeah, I think this is very wise. I mean, to be starting in an ad hoc manner, and really probably nobody is thinking here in more elaborate forms like really becoming part of ELIXIR or anything like that. I mean, there is a question from the audience, virtual audience, that is coming to me, is I guess ELIXIR might be able to contribute here, both in compute infrastructure as well as virtual training. So the question is by Sebastian Janicke from ELIXIR Germany. So my question would be whether we could expect researchers in Latin America to be sufficiently fluent in English, or whether the courses should be in Spanish. This is a question that probably is better answered by the Latin American colleagues. Or
I might take it. So yes, training is always good. Training in a foreign language is harder than doing it in your own. We know that English is the language of science, if you want to call it. But we also have to recognize that it imposes a barrier for people. You learn how to do science in English, but it requires some effort and some years of training in that. So having the materials in Spanish, in my case in Spanish, but Portuguese is also one of the languages that we need the materials in, is important to lower these barriers. I also think that it's not enough to translate stuff that is already in English. I think that creating the materials in English and making it available throughout the world, also brings their own data sets, like I mentioned before, and their own views of stuff, and implicates some uses of the infrastructure that we may not have in other parts of the world. So making the training opportunities available from Spanish or Portuguese to other languages, taking into account our own set of limitations and powers, is a good thing and should be present, regardless of having the material also in English. But actually building them in the languages that people speak, I think it's very important.
So I can maybe add to that. So Frederik Coppens, head of Node for ELIXIR Belgium, also involved in the Galaxy community. And related to the training, we have within Galaxy the Galaxy Training Network. And we've made a lot of training materials with the whole community. And of course, these, as you said, standard are in English. But what we've tried is to automatically translate those into other languages. Spanish is one of them, but also I know Japanese, French, etc. And I must say I was quite skeptical in the beginning of kind of what the quality would be. But these have been kind of checked by native people. I know for certain it has happened in Japan and in Spanish. And it required some changing on how you phrase things to make the English basically a bit more simple or avoid some complicated things, but it works out pretty well. So you can use this as a basis to start from at least, and then for the basic things it can help. So that's one way where we can have these introductory things also opened up from what we've started, but it's not a not a golden bullet to fix everything, but it can help to reuse our materials more easily. I'm not sure how easy it is from other languages. I haven't tried it from Dutch in my case. But so that's one thing. And I just wanted to come back maybe, if I may, on a point that has been made earlier. I think these ad hoc things and very specific use cases is really important to focus on. I mean, biodiversity is what was mentioned. This is also a very important area now in Europe. There's a number of projects starting. I think literally this month or next month, a large European one is starting, where we also need to start writing down, developing, further refining, how are we going to deal with that data? Where are we going to put this? What are the data standards that we're going to use? And I think there is an opportunity to join forces, because this is definitely an area where we have complementary data. But we want to share that across the globe. So if we can agree on the standards and then can align our metadata, that would be a great thing.
So I'd just like to add one more point, building basically on everything that we've discussed so far. So it's Fosmanopoulos, member of the executive committee in the ELIXIR training platform. So the point is that language is indeed a barrier. Both in the material itself as well as the delivery process. And one of the things that are being actively discussed for training resources is how to make them fair, which includes accessibility aspects. So one of the low-hanging fruit ad hoc activities is essentially to work on that front, because it also covers the fairness aspects as well as provide additional training material that might be complementary to the gaps, to the needs that the corresponding communities might have. So I'm sure that there are resources that would be immensely useful for communities here in Europe and vice versa. But right now, this is not possible. So having the registries as the connecting tissue and connecting the actual people, the people network, to exchange ideas, to exchange resources, using a comfort language as the means. That would be English, I assume, one case, but whatever works would be a very nice step in that direction. So that would be the one point. The second point is that the training aspect has been discussed and mentioned many times so far, and even looking beyond ELIXIR, it has been proven as a very effective way of connecting different communities all together. So by establishing such a process of how to have joint training events, training activities, be that working on resources or actually doing the delivery itself, is a way to connect the people in the first place. Then all other aspects, from understanding what the data are, what are the wealth of information, of resources or knowledge that exists in either side, will come through that. So I'm very strong in favor of having this as a starting point.
Yeah, I should say that I completely agree that training is a good way to deliver, of course, excuse me, there is somebody from the real audience with a question.
Yes,
So,
thank you. My name is Marco Mendoza. I'm scientist. I'm the head of a team in Paris, in France. But actually, I want to intervene or participate in this discussion because I'm Bolivian. I'm from Bolivia. And actually, I mean, just to comment about the language, we all speak broken English. Let's do it, right? I mean, I always think that doing science in my native language will not make it, because this will make my students tomorrow be dependent of a translation. I mean, let's speak broken English, but let's do it. So at the end, we have to accept that. The comment on my question that was I wanted to make is more about the type of data we have in South America, because historically, we are always having data in diversity, ecology. That's what we have money for doing science. But with the arrival of the new discussions we are having in nowadays about personalized medicine, I think in South America we are going to have a major problem quite soon if we don't invest in that direction, right? And I just heard from our colleague here from Brazil saying that they have plenty of data, but it's not in personalized medicine. So my question goes in the direction of whether ELIXIR is going to support more than storing data, because we can store what we have. I'm not sure we have data in personalized medicine in South America, and I would say in Bolivia. For sure we don't have it, of course. Yeah.
Anybody from ELIXIR? Andrew, please.
Yeah, maybe I can give some thoughts on this. So there's a lot happening in Europe in the area of personalized medicine. So many countries have initiated large-scale genome population sequencing projects. A lot of this is happening in the context of an initiative called the 1 Million Genomes, and many ELIXIR nodes themselves are partnering with the data generation projects, because the nodes will be acting as the local store of the sensitive human data once they're generated. So we've got one current project called B1MG, which is running at the moment, which has a stakeholder forum where anyone interested in following developments to find out what's happening in Europe. So what architecture, what infrastructure are countries planning to use to be able to store these sensitive human data, which still allows for transnational access. If anyone's interested in that, then you can connect to that stakeholder forum. And then also we will have a project that will be starting in November called the Genomics Data Infrastructure that will bring together most of the countries of Europe, and it will also be looking internationally as well to make sure that if other countries are doing similar things, like thinking through the architecture and infrastructure needs to be able to store large volumes of genomic data for personalized medicine projects, then you can look at what's happening in Europe and use the same standards and so on. So it's true that so far more mention during this webinar has been on, say, infectious disease or on biodiversity, but actually human data is probably the biggest domain in the area of ELIXIR where most countries are trying to build up capacity and connect to each other as well. So if anyone is interested, I can tell you more about that afterwards and give you the names of the mailing lists for you to register for, because there's quite a lot happening.
I can maybe add to that for the kind of generation of this personalized medicine data. So in Belgium, we are part of the GDI project that Andy just mentioned. In ELIXIR is not going to make it that we have that data available. and you're not going to fund all the 18,000 genomes that we're supposed to sequence. But what it does help us do is put this on the agenda for politicians, because we can refer to this European initiative that we want to be part of. And I can tell you it's not trivial to find money for all of this. We are in the process of that. So I don't think we can kind of fix this for countries like Argentina or Brazil, but we can help kind of make the argument to government and raise this on the agenda. I can't tell you how to do that, because therefore you need local people. You need kind of champions that can take this, but we can provide the help that we can. And this is how we've approached things. This is what we've used as means to convince it. This is what we've been doing, and you can maybe use this to kind of spur your government into action. But it really needs a lot of conversation and understanding and how politics work, and that is really a long-term process. So there's no simple answer there, but I think we can go beyond like the technical stuff that we have towards kind of the strategic, how do we go about this?
Can I add something here? Since 2015, Brazil has the Brazilian Initiative on Precision Medicine. It's called the BPMed. And it's aimed not only to generate data for precision medicine, for personalized medicine, but now it's working on how to share this information among all the institutes. And it starts at Campinas University and with a grant from FAPESP. But now they have a lot of hospitals, and there's some research centers inside the hospitals that are contributing to BPMed. And this is one initiative that we have here. And apparently on the next really close future, this data is going to start to be available. One example was during the COVID, they made available exams from the patients, from anonymized patients, and it was made available. This was a really tough task because you have to store all this data and have to guarantee that all this data is in accordance to Brazilian protection law, and how this data is going to be used because it's on the internet. So the LGPD, the Brazilian General Protection Data Law, it's not in action in Europe, for example. In Europe, you have GPDR, so you have its difference. So extending the idea not only to generate and to store this, how do we protect the individuality of these patients that are on this big data pools for personalized medicine? And this is one thing we are trying to work here a lot. And I'm making a spoiler here. On October, we're going to have one conference in Londrina, Paraná, in Brazil, exactly on this, on personalized medicine, and how to connect data, how to get data, how to store this, and more important, how to make this available for the scientific community. And this is not easy. It's not a morning decision. You have to evaluate, you have to develop the idea, you have to develop the actions that are going to be taken, because this will impact not only your group, not only one specific group, but the entire science society. So it's a great starting point for the first question we have here, and how to integrate this. And I think the ELIXIR and I forgot the name, the RDM kit is one thing that will help a lot on this part. It's a great point of discussion. Thank you.
Okay, perhaps closing. I think we can take as conclusion that the two aspects that were presented from the ELIXIR, the data sharing and the training, are really very good starting points for ad hoc actions. And the issue of language that has also been part of the discussion has to be really analyzed up to which degree is to be. I mean, it is, of course, we have to be sensible to that, but in which way this would impact future action is not so obvious. And also the word biodiversity should be clearly in our mind when we talk about South America. And if there are no other question or any other suggestion, I think that people are entering for the next session. So I would close this session, and I thank you, everybody, really for a fruitful time together, learning from each other. Thank you very much.